For the record, Brendan Miller, Mr. Bulford, I'm counsel to the Freedom Corp, who is the entity representing the protesters that were in this city in February and January of 2022. Good evening. Commissioner, just for ease of reference, what I'm continuing to do now, just to get to the point, your counsel have been excellent in adducing evidence in chief, and I'm just going to deal with examination from the questions that arose from the other parties. And so I'll try and be quicker now for you. So
you won't hear many complaints, I think, from the hall on that. But
thank you very much.
It's, of course, you're entitled to your
yes,
time.
I just think it's helpful. So there's a couple things, and there will be a couple documents that arose that are in the system already from my friend's questioning I want to put to you. But the first thing I'd like to ask you about, Mr. Bulford, is Parliament Protection Services. This is, of course, to most Canadians, a sort of police service that nobody understands and nobody knows much about. What can you tell me about it?
Well, after the October 22nd, 2014 shooting at the War Memorial and Mr. Bibeau storming the center block, there was a big review afterwards that took place because there was 3 different agencies that were responsible for security on Parliament Hill. And they were all amalgamated into the Parliamentary Protective Service so that they would have one cohesive unit for the precinct.
Right. And can you tell me, who does the Parliament Protection Services, who does it answer to? Well,
when I was working, I still believe they fell under the RCMP's command, but that may not be the case anymore. They may be completely independent now.
Right. And the RCMP command, then that falls under Commissioner Lucky.
That's correct.
And is it fair to say that from what you've seen from being within the RCMP and seeing it on the news, that you've witnessed or heard of Commissioner Lucky relaying public messages on behalf of the elected executive branch, or relaying information that the political executive branch wants to relay to the public?
Yes.
Okay. So the next question I want to bring up, if I can bring up document 7722_rel.0001.
Council, are you referring to text messages?
The text messages, yes. So it's going, and I'll have to get the other one too. So it's 7724 is the next one, just so you know. Now, I'm not sure if you were present or you had watched this part of the hearing when I referred to these text messages. This is a text exchange between one of the staffers with the Prime Minister's office and another one of the staffers with the Minister of Public Safety's office, okay? And this is, in this context, the staffer with the Prime Minister's office states to the staffer with the Public Safety Minister's office that got a quick response, people are into it, let me know if your boss is too, boss being the Minister of Public Safety. Happy to help however I can. This is what I sent through, by the way. Hi, I just had a chat with Alex at PS, being Public Safety, who had a bit of an interesting idea. As you saw in the pod goals chat, the trucker convoy and some of their more extreme comments calling for January 6th style insurrection are getting more coverage in the media. Alex was surveying whether there would be some interest in his boss doing some media on this eventually. He was chatting with Mendicino about it right before he went into a cabinet retreat. And can you agree the cabinet retreat was on January 24th? Were you aware of that?
That sounds accurate.
Yeah, of 2002. And there he goes on. I think there could be an opportunity to get in on this growing narrative of the truckers, particularly with the research that LRB is doing into their backers. Do you know who the LRB is?
No.
Have you ever heard of the Liberal Research Bureau while you were on the Hill?
No.
Okay. And my thoughts of framing here would be similar to what the PM/Blair, being Minister Blair and the Prime Minister, said last year when January 6th occurred. And the first point is our democracy is something we need to nurture and protect every day. And then if we could bring up the second part of the text message at 7724. And then it goes on, and this is the points that are being relayed or that is essentially going to be the narrative. We will always support the right to peaceful protest, and some of the calls that organizers of these events are making are concerning and will take them seriously, would need something to back this up. We'll continue to monitor the situation closely. The fine line to walk would be to ensure we are not looking like we're directing the police, which obviously is not the goal here. Hoping to canvass your thoughts, Alex said he'd come back to me with a proposal this afternoon when he gets to chat with Mendocino again. Obviously, pending his bosses and our interests in looking into this further. So that text is to either the Prime Minister or someone within his office. And they're explaining what Alex, the Chief of Staff for the Public Safety Minister, has come up with. And he responds, thanks. I had an initial chat with my boss and he's supportive, but wants to wait a day or two. There's a danger that if we come down too hard, they might push out the crazies, being, I think, the far extreme fractions online they were talking about. I think that's fair, she responds. Apparently, Global and others are working on stories. Maybe we see how those land. So you had mentioned that you don't trust legacy media, and you mentioned Global News, and that's one of them.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Now, I've sent this around. I'm not going to try and move this article into evidence at this juncture. But did you know that the following day, Global released a news article titled January 6th event, or that there was going to be a potential January type 6th event on during the Ottawa convoy. And they managed to get Parliament Protection Services to comment. And what was reiterated was one of the points in that text message. So again, I'm asking you, if the government was going to try and relay a narrative, from your experience from working on the Hill in law enforcement, would they use something like the Parliamentary Protection Services to relay a narrative?
I can't say for certain. All of my experience with the Parliamentary Protective Service is I've never seen anything political from them because they're limited in scope. Okay.
And so the Parliamentary Protective Services reiterate, and I'll just read it in. I'm just trying to pull it up again.
I'm not sure you got much from the witness about the parliamentary.
Right. So in any event, I'll deal with that.
There are going to be lots of witnesses that
Understood.
come later.
Understood. So
you can use your time, but
yeah. So moving on, essentially the Parliamentary Protective Services in this article states that they're wary of the security and they won't talk about further matters in order to keep people safe. I'm just summarizing it. We'll put it into evidence through other witnesses. But is it concerning to you that, you know, coming from this issue with misinformation that you're concerned about and you've testified to, that the elected executive branch has identified knowing about news articles and what they're going to be about before they come out? And then
what's the evidence of that?
directly in the text messages, they said that Global's running a piece on it. It was on January 24th, of which that was, and the news article I'm speaking of was on January 25th. And then Parliamentary Security Services says essentially the byline that is in those text messages, sir. And I'll put that into evidence, and I'm just asking if it concerns him if that's the case. That's
I'm
it.
just trying to understand where the evidence is for that.
Yes, it's the text messages. So you have the text messages between the staffers with both the Prime Minister's office as well as with the Minister of Public Safety.
Yes.
They then say what the narrative is going to be. They then say that Global is going to be running this story. And then when Global runs the story, they quote Parliamentary Protective Services, citing basically one of the lines in the text messages, sir.
I'm not sure I understand the link at all in the way you describe it, but the record is clear, so we'll
Yes.
leave it.
So with respect to that, if that is the case, is that something that concerns you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And moving on from that point, my friend brought up with you the issue with respect to danger of people staying and the advice you were giving and everything. And I'd like to bring up OPS document 14504, please. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
It's the document that the OPP and 2 OPS liaisons brought to the Swiss Hotel.
Right. And in reviewing that document, does any of it therein say that all the protesters have to leave?
No.
All right. And so was that one of the documents that formed your understanding of what was to happen?
I thought it was just reinforcing Justice McLean's decision that as long as we abided by those 3 conditions of no one coming to Ottawa to commit violence, do not block critical infrastructure, and do not disrupt trade, we were still considered a lawful protest. And the people that they were delivering that message to, such as myself and the others, didn't fit into any of those categories that I'm reading here.
Right. And with respect to the position therein that says they need to move their trucks, you're not contesting that that was going to have to happen?
No.
Okay. And so when you talk about lawful protest, you're talking about people, actually physical people, human beings on a street protesting. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay. And so it was your belief and you were advising Canadians to come to Ottawa or to stay in Ottawa in order to carry out that sort of protest?
I hate to, it's David Michikowski. I hate to spend more time on Friday evening of everyone, but we really are getting into cross-examination.
That's fine. I'll move on.
More of leading questions, Paul Champ on the record. I think
Thanks.
Pretty leading.
So if we could please bring up OPP document 4286. Okay, so this is the document that my friend put to you. It's the operational plan. And if Mr. Clark wouldn't mind scrolling down to page 31. It's not 31 in the documents. Oh, no, it is. There we go. Perfect. So if you can just take a moment to look at that, Mr. Bulford. It's a script for arresting for arresting protesters.
Okay.
All right, so you can agree the plan is that the protesters were essentially going to be released with just a court date and some release conditions as soon as possible. They weren't being put before a justice of the peace or a bail hearing. That was the plan?
Yes.
All right. And so other than Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, do you know of anyone else this plan just wasn't applied to, where they just got a promise to appear with conditions, undertakings, and they didn't get massive bail conditions imposed upon them by the Crown or on behalf of OPS. Do you know anyone else other than those two individuals who wasn't released under this sort of release plan?
Well, I know of at least Pat King
Yeah,
and his friend, I believe his name is Tyson Billings,
yeah.
were both incarcerated for an extended period of time.
Was anybody else that you know of?
I've heard of other people that were charged, but I don't know the particulars of their release.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you.